I am going to talk to you today about how to force bulbs. And I've always been intrigued by forcing the bulbs and just having a little bit of color during the winter time. It just adds a little bit of joy when it's a little bit dark and gloomy outside. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the different bulbs that you can force. Well, first of all, what is forcing? What we are doing basically is we are tricking the plant into thinking that it's already gone through a winter. And a lot of these bulbs need a type of chilling in order to stimulate the bloom for the bulb for the next year. And it's kind of a survival technique so that they don't go and bloom during the winter when it's too cold. So it's just one of those adaptations that the bulbs have gone through to where they stay dormant during the winter, and they have to go through that chilling period before they will actually activate the enzymes and pathways necessary to get it to bloom. Many of our bulbs can be forced. Tulips, hyacinths, daffodils, other bulbs can be forced. Probably the easiest one, and the one that I've done more in the past, is the paper whites or the narcissus. And they're very easy to force with very little effort, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. So what you basically need is you need chilled bulbs for most of our plants that we want to force. Some sort of container. You can have like a glass jar that's kind of wide, or you can just use regular pots, and then you want good healthy bulbs. And then you can either use a soil or a potting mix, a soilless mix kind of thing, or you might be able to use just pebbles. And then in order to kind of simulate that winter, you want a cool, dark space followed by some warmer, brighter space. So that's generally what you would need. So again, just step by step, you want to choose healthy bulbs. You place the bulbs in whatever media you're going to use. You'll chill them, and then after they've gone through that chilling period, you'll bring them out and provide light and warmth, and then enjoy them. And you get a little bit of bright color and blooms during the winter when we don't normally see those kinds of things. So I'll get into some of the things to do specifically for different bulbs. So these are some paper whites that I started, and I actually planted these during our last garden hour. And I took this picture this morning so you can see in just 4 weeks, they started out just as a bulb. And then I planted the one here on the left in just pebbles. These are just like little glass marbles. And I added water. And when I first started this, the water was all the way up, just touching the base of the bulb. And then I've kind of let the water kind of draw down as the roots have developed. So it's just not all right up there on the bulb the whole time. And then this pot on the right, I just planted in soil, and I just set our soilless mix, and I just put the bulbs just right on top and had a good moist media, and then the flowers just came. There's no chilling required. I took these out of the package and put them in the pots and set them in light. It was not in direct light, and it wasn't in a real warm area. It was kind of cool. I would say 65-ish degrees where I had them growing. And then once they started to bloom, then I brought them out into a brighter room where it was a little bit warmer. And then I've just been watering them a little bit as they go along. I will say with the paper whites, they do have a fragrance that some people may find offensive. It's rather strong, but it's one of those that you might have to get used to. But there are some varieties that have a better fragrance than others. But this is really easy. The paper whites are really easy to go. Now, these bulbs, I probably would not recommend you planting them outside after you're done. These do not freeze well. They won't survive. These are pretty much just an indoor plant to enjoy, to give you a little bit of winter joy. So the light does matter. And I noticed that I had one in a little bit brighter light. Neither pot did I have in direct sunlight. But the one that was in a little bit brighter, that was the jar that you saw, and it grew a lot faster and it bloomed a lot faster. My hope was that they would bloom at Christmas, or I'd have them blooming next week. So they came a little bit early for me. And so I'm not exactly sure why, unless they were already breaking dormancy when I got them out of the store. I'm not sure. But anyway, they did bloom really well in just 4 weeks. Water wisely. You do not want to submerge the bulbs in water, get too much, because they can start to rot, get some fungus, and cause some problems that way. But then I also stumbled across an article from Cornell University about pickling your paper whites. And what this means basically is to add alcohol to the water. You can use like a 10-to-1 ratio of isopropyl, which is 70% alcohol. That's the rubbing alcohol you can get in your pharmacy. Or if you have just straight distilled spirits in your house, like gin, vodka, it might be more of like a 1-to-7 type ratio. You don't want to get too much alcohol because that can inhibit the cell development in the plants and they'll die. It just kills the cells. But what that pickling does, I don't know if you saw on the last picture here where I've kind of had to stake this. It's getting a little bit floppy. Adding the alcohol to the water, according to Cornell, it stunts the growth a little bit. So as soon as the leaves get about 3 or 4 inches tall, you can start adding the alcohol, and that should kind of keep the structure of the plant a little bit shorter so you don't have that floppiness. So you may not have to add any kind of support. Temperature-wise, you want to keep them relatively cool. If you put them in a really warm room, they'll probably develop a little bit faster and won't last as long. So a cooler room is a little bit better. Upper 60s, lower 70s will probably give you more long-lasting blooms than before. And then, like I said, once they're done blooming, you probably just want to discard the bulbs. They probably will not do anything for you after that. Now, some of the other bulbs that you might want to force is an amaryllis. And this is an amaryllis that I bought a couple of years ago. And I set it outside during the summer after it bloomed. And you can see there, first part of October, last part of September, the leaves kind of started yellowing. And I just kind of quit watering it. And I set it down in my basement where it was really cool and dark. Again, it does not need any chilling, just like the paper whites. But then I noticed last week, you can see this little start of a new stem starting to grow right here. And when you reduce the water or keep the water away, that forces that healthy new stem growth. So once you see that, then you can bring it back out into light, give it some water, and in 4 to 6 weeks, I may have another bloom. It may take a little bit longer than that in order for it to mature enough. I'm going to keep it cool because I want to try to postpone it as long as I can. Other things that you might want to force are tulips. And these I planted late. I planted these the first week of December. Probably I'm about 6 weeks late. It would have been better for me to plant these back in October to force them, but I'm hoping that I might get some blooms maybe by Valentine's Day. So these are red varieties, so I can have a nice pop of red color in February. So in these, it does take a little bit more to force them than the amaryllis or the paper whites. So here you can see I just has to have a pot, and I added about 3 inches of media to the pot, and then I placed the bulbs on top of the media. And if you look at the picture down here, if you look at a tulip bulb, you'll see that there's kind of a flat side. And you want to place the flat side to the outside. Now, I noticed here on my picture, I didn't do that. And I really crowded them in. So I may have overcrowded these just a little bit, but it's an experiment. So I'm going to see. This is the first time I've done the tulips before. So then I added more media to it, just so that the tops of the bulbs were visible, kind of like you see in the diagram right here. And then I just placed them in the garage where it's a little bit cooler. I want to keep them from freezing, but I really do kind of want to get them down into the low 30s, but not necessarily into freezing, and keep those there for about 8 to 15 weeks. And then about 5 weeks before Valentine's Day, I'm going to bring those out. Hopefully they'll have enough rooting and growth that they'll start to bloom then. So other tips for forcing bulbs, you can start a new pot in sequential batches, like every couple of weeks, start a new batch. As far as the post-bloom cleanup, again, most of those probably are not going to do well if you force them, because we are asking them to put a lot of energy into making those blooms out of sync from what they normally do. You may have some luck if you let the leaves grow and let them photosynthesize well, so they can put that energy back down into the bulb. But generally speaking, they don't do well if you force them and then you think, oh, I'm going to take them outside and plant them in the garden. I would not expect any blooms the following season. They may have to generate a little bit more energy to do that. And then we do have a couple of publications for forcing blooms, and you can see them there so that you can get some more information.